Stop me if you've heard this one before. If you don't like the contempt orders that judges are using against your president, try to take away contempt as a tool in the tool bag for judges. Yeah, that's what MAGA's doing. They're not even hiding it. As to paraphrase Antonin Scalia, a late Supreme Court justice, sometimes the wolf comes in wolf clothing. That's what we have now. The wolf is a wolf. And all they're trying to do is consume our liberty and take away the power of federal judges in violation of separation of powers. And all of that, we cover it for you on Legal AF, the podcast. Take a listen.
So last point I want to bring up, Michael Popok, just super quickly, is this disastrous budget bill. We've touched upon it at different points throughout the episode, but there was a provision that they snuck in where they're saying federal courts are basically divested of their ability to hold individuals in contempt. It's kind of a fairly broad and unconstitutional phrasing of things. That's one of the things they put in. They also wanted to change the savings count for children idea by Democrat Cory Booker, and they took it, they stole it. Trump stole the idea of Cory Booker, and he's calling it Trump accounts instead of like baby benefit accounts. Now they're called Trump accounts. They gave special tax exemptions for people purchasing silencers and suppressors, and removed any regulations for reporting the purchase of silencers and suppressors to the ATF. That was that was something that was very important, rather, to the MAGA Republicans to get in there. Tanning beds get exemptions, and of course, billionaires are getting trillions in tax cuts. They have to raise the debt ceiling in this disastrous thing by at least $4 to $5 trillion to pay for the tax cuts to billionaires, and it also guts Medicaid, $800 billion. And it takes close to $1 billion, or close to $1 trillion, or somewhere in that range from Medicaid as well. It's an attack on Medicaid the way it's framed, and we'll I think as that now goes to the Senate, this is going to become, I think, a big deal with the Senate. And the question is, then does the Senate get rid of all of these things that the House put in? And then are we basically heading towards, the date of a government shutdown again, and we're going to have to raise the debt ceiling, and then we've manufactured a crisis that really didn't need to happen. I'll remind everybody, the MAGA Republicans have not passed a budget last term, so this is their, I guess, next shot at it right now. We've been going by continuing resolutions based on Nancy Pelosi's budget from 2022, and none of this is normal. Like the Democrats' budget was just passed. Like it just, it's the most basic function of like the way government's supposed to work. And you see the Republicans infighting with each other. But what they do agree on is no contempt.
Well, let's go back to that for a minute before we end the show. First of all, they spend an inordinate amount of time wasting my time and your time, except we make a show out of it, telling the Supreme Court about separation of powers. Everything is, this is like the kitchen magnet poetry. If it's Doge, it's waste and fraud rooting out is being hampered by giving information and transparency to the American people. And if it's anything about the executive branch power, it's separation of powers are being violated. How is Congress telling the third branch of government how a federal judge can fashion a remedy from his or her tool bag of remedies? How by threatening funding, how is that constitutional and not a violation of separation of powers? They have the purse strings, but they're not allowed to reach in and it would be like if Kristi Noem was empowered by the president to sit in the room of major cases and then overrule the judge because she's using some executive branch prerogative. They get to fund and then shut the legal AF up. They don't get to tell the federal judge how to rule in a case or what remedies to use or not use. And they don't even know what they're doing anyway, because there's reporting, I'm sure on Midas Touch, that when they asked Jim Jordan what the provision was about, he said, this is just about nationwide injunctions about immigration. And they said, did you read it? That's not what it says. There's no words of immigration in there. Well, it's 4:00 in the morning, right? It's 4:00 in the morning when they're passing these bills. They don't know what they say. which will play into our hands as Democrats and free-thinking people, because they're going to get challenged as being unconstitutional. And then this unitary executive branch majority on the Supreme Court's going to have to say, I think you're also judges, right? And the chief judge runs the judiciary. So you're okay with the president telling you only because he's now the subject of 1 and soon to be 2 contempt orders? You know, we already had Boasberg, even though it was put on ice, Judge Boasberg finding probable cause that criminal contempt was committed by the Trump administration. And you've got Judge Zinnes in Maryland in the Abrego Garcia case, who is on the 1 yard line of finding contempt. And she's going to punch it through by right after Memorial Day. Forget about fireworks for 4th of July. They're coming early this year, everybody. It's going to be early next week. So this is the speaking of transparent, the transparent reason that the Trump administration even gives a crap about contempt, because they're always doing something that's contumacious. And so that's going to get turned down by the appropriate, I have to think now, you and I will think through who the proper party for standing is to bring that case at the DC Court of Appeals level, at the DC trial court level, and then it's going to go on, I don't know about fast track, but it's going to go up to the United States Supreme Court. And there's already a loophole in it, because it just says they have to set a bond. Now, you and I, when we practice in private practice, when we ask for an injunction, there's often a bond that needs to be set. And the purpose of the bond, just to do a teachable legal AF moment here, the purpose of the bond is if it turns out that the injunction was improvidently granted by the judge based on facts that turned out to be different, at the end of the case than in the beginning of the case, or new facts were developed, or, an argument that seemed reasonable at the top of the case, at the bottom of the case was less reasonable, and the injunction should not have been issued. This is to compensate the person or the business for the injury suffered for having an injunction against them. And so they kind of come up with a number. Could be $10, $1, no dollars, or I've been involved with cases where it's $5 million, $10 million, $15 million in bonds that have to be posted. Or beyond. However, when you're dealing with the public sector, and I've done those cases as well, because of the public interest that's involved, there's law that says that governments, for instance, don't have to post a bond. And if you're going for a constitutional violation argument, which is all we're seeing play out with the Trump administration, judges don't require a bond. Now they're saying you got to hold a bond hearing. But it could be $1. Could be $10, could be $100. So they didn't set an amount because they slapped this thing together. And like you said, they hijacked something that was in there already, and then they don't know what they're doing. So there is a way around it. But the whole concept of Congress telling the judiciary, the judicial branch, what they can and can't do in a case, including a remedy, is wholly unconstitutional. And hopefully you and I will be reporting about good judges in due time making that ruling. Welcome back every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You know where you should be. You should be on the Midas Touch Network watching Legal AF, the podcast. And then over here on Legal AF, the YouTube channel. And the way you vote for us and show support, keep us on the air, so to speak, is to hit the subscribe button as we continue our march to 700,000 subscribers. That's all because of you, and I really do appreciate it. Listen to our podcast on audio podcast platforms, Legal AF. Watch us on YouTube, on Midas, and here on Legal AF. Subscribe to Legal AF YouTube channel. And what else do we have for them, Johnny? The Legal AF home game. More particularly, Legal AF the Substack. Come over there as well. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.